Hi everybody. So I was told off last time we did this, I was told off by somebody because I didn't let Lara explain what you did. So we're going to start by, hello Tarryn, thank you for coming. So if we could start by, if you could explain what Kafoodle is and what Kafoodle does, and then we can go back to what I really want to do, which is talk about your journey to that point and then how we're going. But if you could explain what Kafoodle is, that would satisfy at least one miserable sod who was here last time.
So the elevator pitch around Kafoodle would be that we are a B2B tech company that believes in connecting people to the food that they need the most. So if you take all of the buzzwords out of that, we are a SaaS business that does compliance for commercial kitchens. We focus on three main sectors: healthcare, education, and what we call the business and industry, for those of you who are in food here, contract catering. And we do all of their compliance. So you'll know around the allergen legislation, the new labelling nutrition legislation that came out yesterday, and then we do their costings and all of their health and safety, and then easily communicate that to diners, patients, residents, children, students, so they can easily see what's in their food and what's available for them to eat.
Okay, so we'll come back to legislation a little bit later on if that's okay, but can we start by, I mean, that's not, I wouldn't say that's a natural area for somebody to go into, like a SaaS business in labelling and nutrition. Where did the idea come from, and where was the problem?
So I myself am hospitality born and bred, so I started in pot wash when I was 17, cleaning pots and fish. And worked my way up and came to London from Cape Town, as I'm sure you can hear, and ended up owning my own restaurant in central London. And there was this big issue about how to manage stock, your costs, just manage a business in a commercial kitchen. And we were using, it's a very simple idea for those looking at me, we're not deep tech by any sorts, but the idea behind it was the fact that I was using an Excel spreadsheet, a Microsoft Word document, and basically loads of JPEGs, and then Dropbox to save all your recipes, work out all the costs of your recipes, and then print out loads of sheets to give to chefs. And when we were working at global companies, you could have up to 300 restaurants who were following the special of the day that you had to get it communicated to. So basically my co-founder and I ended up having a conversation, and I was moaning about the fact that to this day actually I cannot work in an Excel spreadsheet, and I think I deleted a formula, and for the life of me I couldn't figure out how it all worked, and that I wish there was something that just made it easier. And she, being a natural techie, said, well, why don't you just build it? And she actually wanted to build a B2C app, but we ended up building a compliance system.
And so where were you at that point? Did you still own a restaurant, or were you doing?
I owned the restaurant, and I was consulting the company that I thought would buy it. Which was the biggest, was Caesars Entertainment, for those of you who know Las Vegas. So they were basically looking at rolling out a tech platform that would help them to track their food and beverage the way they track gambling spend. So originally I was thinking of elevating it to a CRM, so you would tag it to people. So it's a really boring story if anyone is into casinos, but basically you don't make money out of poker players because the house doesn't win. But poker players eat and drink more than other gamblers. So the idea behind it was, if you knew someone had a nut allergy or really liked Dom Perignon, that you would stock their minibar accordingly, and everywhere they went, they would have this kind of notification saying, today there's Dom Perignon on offer and there's a nut-free dish here. That was kind of the ultimate goal. And then obviously, like every tech company, we must have pivoted 7 times.
So your co-founder was the tech person, and they just started to build, did they?
Started to scope.
Okay.
So we did a year's worth of feasibility around it. We quite quickly realized that there were in fact softwares that did exactly what I wanted. They just were maybe slightly antiquated or weren't quite fit for purpose. So we did a good year of kind of feasibility and scoping of exactly what we wanted to do. And I mean, our MVP was a very clever Excel spreadsheet, to be honest.
And so you stayed in your restaurant, sort of employed at the point while you're doing that feasibility?
Stayed at Caesars, yeah.
Okay. And was your co-founder employed at the same place or somewhere different?
No, so she was running her own app company that was building and selling applications.
Okay. And so the MVP, a flash spreadsheet. And what did you do with that? Did you show it to potential customers? Did you show it to investors? How did that?
Yeah,
what did you do
so,
with that?
I mean, is anyone here from the food industry? Do you work with chefs? No. So if you can take a guess, we went to a bunch of pubs and restaurants and showed chefs a very technical Excel spreadsheet and then asked them if they would pay £40 a month to use it. It was probably the worst idea in the world, because there really is an expression of too many chefs in the kitchen. And everyone wanted it to do something different. Every chef in the world has a certain ego to them or an opinion. So we then kind of dialed it back and went to different areas of the business to kind of create what they would want to see and what would be most useful. And in all honesty, we were really lucky that we got in with government. So we got them to validate that what we were building was something they would support.
So how did you go from, when you say government, how did you go from restaurants to government? Was that through the NHS or was it through?
So we, unlike other people, avoided the NHS and we went straight to what is the Food Standards Agency. So they're the FSA and they are the ones that brought out the allergen legislation and they're the ones that will do, if you go around to restaurants, you'll see the green and black scores on the door. They're that company. And we basically went to them and did the feasibility with them saying, you've brought out this allergen legislation, you want every independent restaurant or every commercial kitchen in the UK, whether they're a care home, a hospital, a school, or just a takeaway, to follow these guidelines. Do you think something like this would be useful? And then we basically built the simplest thing we could with the idea that we wanted the independent restaurant in Croydon or in Bournemouth to be able to use it. So if you imagine your ice cream shop on the boardwalk, we wanted them to be able to use the software.
So where did the initial idea for that allergen information come from? Because that's quite away from that original idea, which is managing managing the menus, giving it to 300 chefs. Did a chef suggest that? Was that just something you came up with, or?
My co-founder is the techie who was building it, and her husband has a severe sesame allergy who had an incident with anaphylactic shock in 2000 and late in 2014. So the main allergen and traceability idea was very much her driving it, where she really, and still does, and we still do believe that people genuinely don't want to harm other people and that the allergen legislation would be enough. So if you had a software that just did allergens, people would buy it. However, in commercial kitchens, they needed to run a whole kitchen as well as do their allergens.
Okay, so the FSA said, yes, we like it, go away and do it?
I mean, the FSA validated what we wanted to do and what we knew we could sell. And I mean, they didn't obviously support too much of the product, but they said, if you went away and built a product like this, we'll happily give you the guidelines, make sure you build it in compliance, and we'll still do a trial with them as well. But it kind of validated for us the need for it and the fact that it was a driven demand. And
so your co-founder then went and built that product?
Yes, with a head of tech. So
okay.
She's not a developer.
Okay. So
we had a developer early on.
You were a developer early on. So how did you fund that? How did you fund the developer?
Ourselves.
Okay. And so how long did that take to build?
So that probably, in all fairness, by the time we'd given him the correct scope, and keeping in mind that I'm not at all a techie, but I built the product from the design element, so I had to learn what use cases were. I had to learn what wireframes were. None of that was something I'd come across in the food and beverage industry. So by the time I'd got those right, which took me a while, 6 months, I think.
Okay.
I mean, we've iterated since. This is kind of the basic product that had allergens.
And so when was that? What year are we talking about now?
So that was probably built by June 2015.
Okay, so good 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Exactly. And how did you go about getting your first customer?
Knocking on doors.
How many doors did you knock on to get your first customer?
About 100. And our first few customers were really lovely independent pubs who were great, who were a lot of onboarding. The business model didn't work, where you had to really hold their hands and get all the data for them and do everything for them. And then we were really lucky that our fourth customer was a very big enterprise contract caterer.
And were you charging? You mentioned £40 a month earlier. Was that the figure that you were charging?
Yep.
That's quite from a SaaS perspective, that's quite a cheap amount of money to do lots of onboarding, isn't it?
Yep. Now, where are you going with this?
Those economics don't fly for very long, do they? No.
We always thought we would be volume. I mean, I think there's a certain naivety, no matter how far you validate a product. If I just give you the basic stats, when I launched the company, very naively, there's 680,000 commercial kitchens in the UK. right? 4 years later, they're 530,000 roughly. So that's a huge amount of restaurants that have closed down in the 4 years, and that's not because of my software. So logically, if I was in America pitching this, I would be saying there's 680,000 commercial kitchens in the UK, and I'm going to have 10% of the market paying me £100 a month. Do the maths. That's £160 million a year. I mean, that's literally, I think my first sales plan had us making 1.2 million in year one. Because it was the legislation, there was no other software like it, and people needed it. And chefs went, my Excel spreadsheet's fine, thanks. But that was the reality of it.
And so, what did you have to do to let's go through the onboarding in a little bit more detail.
Sure.
Because I think this is one area that a lot of startups get really stuck. They think they can charge £10 a month or £15 a month and £20 a month, but then suddenly realise they have to get a sales guy that's got to go out and knock on 400 doors, train them for 3 months,
yeah.
and then suddenly realise that they're not making any money. But obviously when you're very young, you can do that because you can then change your business
Yes.
accordingly. So what did you actually have to do for the onboarding?
To be honest with you, we pivoted. So we were always going to be about the independent restaurant, and we still want to be about the independent restaurant, and it's something I'm incredibly passionate about as an independent restaurateur. But we went after the enterprise clients. So we actually we are still making our onboarding easier because you can digitize a lot of it. But to date, there is no full set of ingredient data in the UK. So you can't speed up onboarding because every restaurant has different pricing files, different recipes, different menus, different ingredients. And that data set is still being built even 3 years later. But what we could do is go to companies that would pay for our time, which independents can't always do.
So that first bit is literally getting all your raw ingredients
Yep.
into the system and accompanying prices presumably, and
Yep.
allergen information and nutrition.
Yes, so keeping in mind that in theory until yesterday, nutrition isn't a legislation on restaurant food. So it's very hard to get the data, and raw ingredients is a no-brainer. A carrot is a carrot is a carrot. But unfortunately, a lot of the average restaurants or pubs will buy in. So they'll buy from Macro, from the Co-op, from Costco, and that is compound ingredients. And what we don't do, which some amazing other agri-tech companies do, is that traceability. So if you imagine you have a child with a nut allergy, you actually kind of want to know exactly where that item has gone from coming out the ground or the manufacturer onto that place. And that is very hard.
Yeah, okay. So how soon, so you got 4 customers, one of them was an enterprise chain. Was it at that point that you suddenly thought, we need to go enterprise, or was it much later? How much longer did you keep going down the independent route?
So the techies in the room might be looking at me like I'm crazy, but the product wasn't naturally built for an enterprise client. It was built for smaller companies, so it wasn't built to be a huge SaaS product that could be used by people turning over upwards of £10 million a year. So we carried on going down independence while we crazily tried to redo the software behind the scenes to make it more robust for enterprise clients, and then we launched that in January 2016.
Okay, and how many customers did you have by that point? So by January? 10. So at £40 a month. Were you still funding all this yourself, or did you?
Yep.
Okay. Still paying the mortgage, just
Yep,
about.
That's why I work for a casino.
Eating lots of beans on toast.
Yeah, pretty
Okay.
much. And remortgaging houses.
Excellent. What did you notice a sudden change when you went to the enterprise sale?
Yes, we did. The adoption was quicker. We were able to charge for our time better, and also we got a lot more credit in the fact that it was, if you're being used by an aspirational brand in the sector, then the smaller brands will jump on board.
Interesting. Did you stick to this? What price point did you move to? You didn't start charge £40 a month, were you starting?
No, so
put a few noughts on or something?
Yeah, quite a few noughts. But also we learned about the fact that there was still value in the human. So we're not a pure SaaS business, and we probably won't be forever, or at least 3 or 4 years still. So we started charging consulting fees, so using my expertise and my co-founder's expertise, account management fees, onboarding fees, because what we also realized with the bigger clients is there is a lot of data. So they do still change their menu items, their dishes and all that, their recipes, and they're not going to hire someone to do that, and you're not going to get a chef to do that. So there was a market in, we now did data as a service. So a lot of our enterprise clients have us on a data retainer, as well as paying our then licensing fees and our maintenance fees.
Okay, so that's quite interesting. So it sounds like you've sort of managed to productize the service. Is that
Yes.
true? Okay. So you charge it like a subscription fee?
Exactly.
Keep going. Okay. Because that's quite interesting, I think, for many startups. I speak with startups and they think as a SaaS business, they sort of have to sell 100% product.
Yeah.
But it's actually very, very difficult for software companies to be 100% product. There aren't really that many of them. So can you go through that process of how you productized it? Presumably you start off with just selling a day rate, did you?
Yeah.
And then how did that turn into a product?
By hiring a team much more experienced than me. So in all honesty, my head of client services came up with it, which I suppose you all would say is pretty natural. But he realized that he kept charging day rates, and then he would spend 20% of his time chasing the invoices for the one day that was happened. And he basically just, now in every single proposal, we basically pivoted our entire model. So you actually aren't allowed to use the software unless you pay for half a day of our time. And that is where we do your business architecture, and we go through with you as the software experts how we would use the software to run your business. And as part of that, we assess how much data time you would need. So depending on the size of the company, you might only need half a day. And then if you don't do that half a day, we do, is it accrued? So you can keep it. But normally we'll turn on someone and go, if you have 100 hospitals, you probably need 5 days of data a month. And you can pay us quarterly in advance, or you can pay us annually up front and you get a discount.
Excellent. And you mentioned a director of client services then?
Yes.
So
head
that's
of client services.
Sorry?
Head of client
Head
services.
of client
in case he
services.
watches this.
Sorry, head of client services. But that's another hire.
Yes.
So when did you?
Yeah, by this stage,
So where?
10.
So whoa, okay. So you've gone from.
I skipped. So we launched in January 2016, and we got government funding.
Okay, so let's talk about the funding a little bit. What was that process, and how did that go?
So I think we were quite lucky. I don't know if any of you have worked with Innovate UK before, but my process was we built the product in June 2015. My aunt had an incident in hospital in the same month, basically, where she went in with pancreatic cancer, and they obviously removed half of her pancreas. She woke up on Saturday as a diabetic, but the diabetes unit don't work weekends, so no one knew what to feed her. And I basically had this whole tangent about this is ridiculous in a hospital. Ended up, as I do, running my mouth off to someone at an event who turned around and said, actually, that would be a really good grant for this smart grant program we're running. I know this grant writer that works for No Win, No Fee. Do you want to work with him and submit a grant? And basically 2 months later, we'd been awarded the grant. I don't think it works like that very well.
I think we can ask Anthony can fill us in later, I think. I doubt it does. Are you open to talking about how much the grant was?
Yeah. So it was match funded, read the fine print, especially with R&D tax credits. So it was for £250,000.
So where did you get the other £250,000 from?
From our first angel investor.
Okay, so you went through some angel investing as
we were very lucky in the way that one of our original founders exited his company to Samsung when we were just starting the company. So he'd taken a step back and he wanted to put money in for his equity instead of time. Okay,
so you had an angel investor, and then he match funded the government funding.
Yeah.
So that gave you just shy of £500,000.
Yes.
And so at that point, when you got that £500,000, were there still the three of you?
No, there were probably 5 of us by then.
Okay, so what were your first hires outside of the 2 founders and the dev?
So
Can you remember?
I can, and we probably didn't do it the right way, if I'm honest. Firstly, we took a lot of friends out of retirement who would work for us for free. So we had a head of product who'd also just been given his redundancy, and we had a project manager who was just happily retired, who I basically just pulled in. So they were probably our first 2 hires. He was then head of product and she was our project manager. And then we obviously we had a tech guy who was basically working in his other company. He was just building the product in the background. And we brought him on full-time permanently, but he was still our only developer. And
then you got the £500,000.
And then we hired.
And then started. And what did you do? Once you get that £500,000, what was your thought process? What was it to do? Was it to grow the product team? Was it to go and sell more?
It was to grow the product team. So obviously with the government grant, we had to deliver a slightly more robust product. So we had to firstly validate so the first 6 months of the grant is feasibility again, validating that this product will work in care homes and in hospitals, which is what the project manager was doing. And then we were obviously still also trying to fix the original MVP to be able to build this new product that the government. So we were trying to do that in 6 months, so that by the time we'd proven that our idea would work ideally, that the first MVP was basically good enough tech to build the rest of the product onto.
But from a slightly outside-in perspective, going into a completely different market before you've sort of really got a beachhead in
Yep.
one is a potentially challenging and risky thing to do, isn't it? Did it feel like that at the time, or was it just actually it's the same product, I don't care, I'll just go and sell it to anybody?
Yeah, so I lost a hire over it, actually.
What was the hire that you lost?
Weirdly, she was the CEO that I was trying to bring in because I was adamant I was not going to be CEO of my company.
Okay.
And she just said that she couldn't work with someone who was crazy. But in the nicest terms, she just said, this is ridiculous. We're literally trying to get a foothold into commercial kitchens and allergens, and you want to go and build a health product. It's 65% of our revenue, if you're listening. But I mean, it was. In all seriousness, my team who knew me by then, which was Four and my co-founder, and our investor, thank God at the time, had unwavering belief in me. I have no idea why. I think because I'm an ex-salesperson, so I think I sold the dream. We actually had no idea. But it was I think at the time it was equity-free money. It was something I was adamant we were going to do, was always do nutrition. I had a gut feeling that we might have been slightly ahead of the curve, which we were, but nutrition was going to become even more important than allergens. Obviously not from a life and death perspective, but I still do stand by the fact that obesity costs us a lot more than EpiPens every year. So it is a huge global problem.
And why didn't you want to be CEO?
Apparently it's an awful job. I am not a CEO. I am a little bit bonkers. And I suppose I'd always been in sales, and I had always worked under CEOs who had always had very strong financial backgrounds. It was a SaaS tech company, and I used to work in the kitchen. And I think it was very much, I mean, speaking honestly, for all of you, everyone has those doubts, right? As in, how am I the best person to run this company? There must be so many people better than me. And there are, but she's my COO. And I think it was that kind of, actually I'd rather be the head of strategy or the sales director or you want to stay in your comfort zone, because I was learning use cases and wireframes, and every day was so dramatically different that I think the last thing I wanted to do was be given a job that you were way in over your head for.
So when you lost the CEO hire, is that when you became CEO? Was that?
No,
you still stayed under the.
Yep.
Did you recruit another one?
Nope.
So what? You didn't have a CEO.
No, we had co-founders, which a lot of companies do until they're 5 years old.
But there's always somebody who's in charge, isn't there?
Yes, and that was the dynamic. And it's actually when you go into healthcare, especially, the NHS don't know what a co-founder is. I mean, they do. And sorry if they're listening, but I mean, I'm sure others, they don't. They know what a CEO is, they know what an MD is, they know what a COO is, and a head of product is. If you go there and be like, I'm a founder, and you're selling to the NHS, they're like, we don't work with startups. And especially when we started really targeting the enterprise clients, they wanted to work with a CEO or a head of, or they didn't want to work with a founder of a startup because they were scared we were going to go bankrupt. So that's kind of, we just left it, and then you say that we got someone in who was like, so what are you to do? Between Kim and I, because we hadn't given ourselves job titles. I think we were so scared of putting ourselves in boxes because, this was my first proper company, if anyone's looking at me like I'm an idiot. I was so scared of putting myself in a box because you're doing everything. So I had this huge thing of, if I took the title of CEO, then who's doing the sales? And then am I going to get told that I'm a really bad CEO because all I'm doing is selling? And I was still writing our blogs and doing Twitter, and is that what it... So I think I had this preconception of, well, CEOs kind of... I actually had no idea what they did. But I needed a tangible, I'm head of sales, and my daily job is to sell something. Yeah. Because you're so busy getting caught up doing everything that you can finish a day and feel like you've done nothing.
And we'll come back to the CEO in a little bit, but I want to go back to the selling thing. So I still want to go through this map where you got your money,
Yeah.
you had some customers, you had a couple of people,
Yes.
and you were, by the sounds of it, still doing all the selling.
Yes.
But now you've got to not only sell to hotels,
Yeah.
hotel chains, you've got to go and sell to the NHS
Yeah.
and care homes.
Mhm.
How did you do that? Was that just like 2.5 days on one, 2.5 days on another? What? How was it not that? How did you do that?
I mean, I actually hate traveling, so I did it by geography. So if I was going to be up in Manchester, I would basically sell to anyone that would take a meeting. And we did actually buy a few databases. So we did a lot of mail outs and a lot of phone calls saying, we're in Manchester for these 2 days, would you like to meet us? And I think, I think probably, I'm trying to think about, actually the first NHS I ever pitched to did buy us. So it couldn't have been that bad. But I do remember the medical team looking at me and asking me questions and me just thinking, I was trying to Google stuff under the table because I had no idea what they were talking about because I'd never worked in a hospital kitchen, I'd never worked in a hospital, I'd never done med tech, I'd never done health tech, and I'm not a dietitian. And they kept asking me all the stuff that was the software I mean, I hadn't heard of Muscle. I mean, I really shouldn't say that. But for those of you who do know healthcare, Muscle is around malnutrition, and 1 is the worst, or actually, you know, it's 3 the worst. I still don't. But it's, I didn't know about mass scores. I thought BMI was still a pretty legit calculation of nutrition. I hadn't done a nutrition diploma, and people were talking at me like, you should just know this stuff because you're building a product to do it. Why aren't you qualified at X, Y, and Z? Where's your MBA from? And why aren't you a doctor? And so it was really, really tough, whereas you naturally fit back to the chefing side of it. We actually just went kind of lower down the pole and ended up selling to the chefs who can speak our lingo.
Okay, so that was just going to ask. So I was going to say, why did they buy it then? If there must be something
Actually,
there, either great product or passion about
it's a great
what you're doing?
product. I mean, I'd love to say it was me. It definitely wasn't me that day. But it was a really good product, and I think, funny enough, one of the hopefully future investors did say this to me today, where he's like, it's not amazing. I mean, it's not deep tech. It's got no huge AI, but it's a really valid problem we have in the world, and you're solving something that everyone else finds just far too boring to handle. And it was that, well, actually, I think it's a pretty cool problem, and I think we're cool. But it was exactly that they actually didn't have an option. We were the only product doing what they wanted to do, and we were the only ones thinking of building what we were building. So I think it was the product that got them that day. And they actually since ended up funding an NHS trial.
I mean, it's interesting, but a lot of £100 million businesses, as we were talking about earlier,
Solve boring problems.
solve very, very boring problems, absolutely.
I hope we're one of them.
Slack door right, didn't it? So let's go. So you're still growing.
Yes.
You're still doing all of the selling?
My account manager would disagree. So
They're post-sale, aren't they?
yeah, she is. I mean, I don't know if this is the right analogy, but I'm basically amazing at catching a ball and then getting rid of it. So I'm not a details person. So she is my catcher. So I'm great at doing this, well, maybe not this exactly, but doing the talk and getting everyone involved, and then as soon as they need to get down to the details, the ball gets thrown to her, and she does get them over the line. So she's a phenomenal negotiator, and she's a closer.
So my account manager always used to say that sales guys are good at lighting fires, and then the account managers put them all out.
It's probably exactly the way my team described me.
But it's quite a big organisation. So who was looking after? So you're at 10, 11, starting to grow because you've got some funding. Mm-hmm. Who was looking after the people and the business as it was growing?
No one.
And so did you hit any bumps because of that?
Yes. I think it was a big reality check for me. My team, I don't know how anyone copes with this. Actually, if anyone can give me advice afterwards, HR doesn't come naturally to me. I'm really not a great manager. So I think my co-founder is the fluffy one, and she was also just getting too busy with the tech and the products. So we definitely had a lot of culture shifts, culture changes, and hires leave, and a weird movement. And then we actually ended up hiring a COO who now handles all of that and is absolutely brilliant, but has kind of settled that. So I still haven't done any of mine, but she's brought appraisals into the business and all of that kind of stuff, which we just hadn't done.
And what number hire was she? Can you remember? Because are you about 20 now?
Yeah. So she would have been 13?
13, okay.
Depends you exclude the tech guys, so 9.
They don't care.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're internally, but they don't do appraisals.
So, how many people did you lose? Was that quite a turbulent period? Did you lose lots of people? Was
No,
it two or three?
I was really lucky in the fact that my first hires, I'd taken out of retirement. So they literally, and I mean, the gentlemen they were both quite a bit older. So the average age in our team is about 35, 36. And they literally pulled me aside and were like, you need to fix this. Like, we get you and we're here because we get it and we love the passion, but this isn't working. And you need to take a step back and think about how much do you value us and what do you want the company culture to be like.
And so when you hired the COO,
yeah,
who was CEO? Was this you then?
Yes. Well, yeah.
So you'd become CEO then when you hired the CEO?
Yeah, so we did an announcement. I mean, I actually hired her as a consultant to come and help me fix it because it's probably the scariest thing you do as a startup when people come to you with problems. And it's now just on my desk, please just bring me solutions because I'm not taking your monkey. And it's the scariest thing when people keep coming to you with problems and you don't always have the solution. I mean, you should, but you don't. So obviously everyone came to me with, we have this big problem. There's no structure, there's no process, there's no culture, there were a few problems. And I went and hired someone who could fix it because I wasn't the right person to fix it. So I brought her on as a 3-month consultancy with a set project to fix. And she did it so well and liked us enough to stay.
Excellent. And so, and obviously that's one big change between although you were doing the same thing before, like sort of switching from being a founder to being a CEO,
yeah.
there's a subtle shift which obviously the COO comes in and helps with.
Yeah.
What other challenges have you found after putting that CEO hat on?
I suppose personally I struggle with it the most. So my chairman turned around to me the other day and he said, you've got to realize the only job as the CEO is to make yourself redundant. Everything you should be doing every day is making sure that your team don't need you. Which actually was a weird, calming feeling because there were definitely days where I think, what have I done today? Because you do little bits of everything. But I think it was the kind of, I've always been a master delegator, as the team will say, but it was that kind of, actually, I have hired people so much better than me to do these jobs. You know, my account growth manager is a phenomenal closer. My client services guy has probably built more data than anyone else in the team. He's just really good. Our project managers are amazing. And it's knowing what they need from me, which might be still validating the product or validating a client problem, but actually letting them do what they've been hired to do, and making yourself disposable. Which, as a founder, you're like, but it should all be about me, and it's not.
So are you still the front person, the spokesperson for the business?
Yes, although I think that'll change pretty soon. Caroline, who's our COO, is far more articulate, far more knowledgeable, and as soon as I get over her fear of public speaking, she'll probably take the place.
Excellent. And so you mentioned earlier that the restaurant side is 35%. So
and
you've got 35.
B&I. So weirdly, we don't actually work in restaurants and hotels. We mainly work in business and industry, which is, for those not in the industry, is if you've ever worked in a big bank like HSBC and you go down to the staff canteen and you order your lunch, that's what we work in. And then schools and hospitals and care homes.
Okay.
So restaurants, we actually haven't ended up working. We have a few. We work with Green King, the pub group,
right.
But it's not our big market.
Okay. So, but the 65%.
Mm-hmm.
When did you start to notice that it was going that way? Was that fairly quick, or was it a gradual change?
It was phenomenally quick. So when we said I should never ever have gone to healthcare and everyone hated me for doing it, we obviously finished that grant in January 2018, and we were absolutely adamant to prove people wrong and that we'd done the right thing. So we only decided last year, April, from there, but our entire strategy from April 2018 was just to focus on healthcare.
Right.
And basically what we did then, and I know everyone, we should have done this before, we validated very quickly that there was this gap and that we could sell it really quickly into healthcare, whereas restaurants were taking forever. And it was very unusual. So before I'd released the product, I had a wait list for it in healthcare. So before the product had even been released, we'd had the Salford CCG say that they wanted to do a year's trial on it. We had the largest care home group in the UK say they wanted to do a trial on it. And we had the largest global contract caterer in the world say they wanted to do it. So we knew that it was validated, so we thought we wanted to give it everything, because also having those names behind you meant that you could get more traction.
And presumably, the sales cycle been different though? Has it been longer, more awkward, same?
Same. I mean, no, it's odd. So the care home group and the contract caterer moved very quickly, so the entire sales cycle was probably 3 months. But then there are other sales cycles. I mean, we've got one sale going into contract now that we've been speaking to for 28 months. But on average, we are still about 3 months as a sales cycle.
Okay. And so is the plan to sort of ditch the B&I bit, or just keep it low key and focus on the healthcare stuff? What's the next 12 months going to hold?
So the next 12 months we'll probably stick with healthcare and grow with our current accounts in healthcare. We're also exploring spinning off into kind of the domiciliary care market. Okay.
Because I looked at you've actually got quite a deep product. I don't mean deep as in technically deep, but it's actually quite broad. This does seem to do lots of things.
Yes, but it's one platform.
Okay.
So if you ever get to see my deck, it's the journey. So everyone says that, but it's still one journey. So it's one platform with multiple features. But the idea is it's parsnip to plate. So if you imagine a parsnip going through a kitchen, you have to order it, you have to prepare it, you have to cook it, you have to put it into a menu, and you have to serve it to someone. We do everything along that journey. In healthcare, it might be more important to know what that parsnip relates to condition-wise. In a restaurant, it might be nutrition-wise. In a school, it might be allergen-wise. But it's just using and highlighting what the data gives you in different ways. And that's branding and marketing, if I'm honest. But it's the same tech platform that every commercial kitchen uses. And that's a commercial kitchen in a hospital, a care home, a school, or a restaurant. It's still a commercial kitchen. And it's the same legislation.
Okay. And the new nutrition legislation that came in yesterday, obviously it sounds like you've got great timing for a start. Yeah. But what impact will that have, do you think? It's very early, but...
Yeah, no, it's hard to tell, because I would have thought the original allergen legislation would have had a huge impact, especially around the amount of people that legally have to report on it. I think the legislation is tough because the industry is divided. As a company, it's fantastic legislation. As a commercial kitchen, it's impossible legislation. So there's definitely a backlash from the industry that don't want to comply. And I think, I haven't read the whole article, but I think you only have to comply by 2020. So there's still a time to get compliant with it. But I think we're best poised to take advantage of it. So I would hope to see some sort of uplift in the more casual dining sector that we work in. And especially in the kind of takeaway environment where you imagine your takeaway being correctly labelled with allergens and nutrition. I think that is the next kind of big wave.
And in terms of company growth, what do you want to do with Kafoodle? Are you trying to take over the world? Are you happy being 20 people? Where do you sit there?
So we will have to grow people-wise because of the data services and services instinct. I think we would like to grow. We would love to be given the opportunity to really change the world. And I think our main kind of growth point is if we can really disrupt the Meals on Wheels market, and if we can really validate the feeding people at home in a healthy, sustainable, affordable way before I die, then that would be incredible. And I think that's where we are on our roots. Our big passion is really improving global health through eating correctly and eating what is best for you. And if we can just do an element of that, that would be incredible. And
so do you have customers abroad yet, or are you primarily in the UK?
Yeah, so we have customers in Dubai, one in South Africa, and then I think we might be getting New Zealand as well.
Because I presume the legislation trail, you sort of have to track that to a certain degree, do you?
Yes, we thought so, but then I would be in Spain, Italy, France, and the French. How can I use it? I mean, batter and dishes. You're not going to want to learn the nutrition. So if you think about the legislation is in EU legislation, and we're still currently in the EU. So that would technically mean that I'd go EU, which we're not. Dubai actually have no legislation, and New Zealand have a different legislation. So actually it's more the commercial benefits of our software now that are really shining through as being a really good software to use, legislatively or not. So yeah, Dubai have no legislation. I just think they are looking at taking nutrition more seriously.
Okay. And you mentioned traceability earlier on.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that you can see Kafoodle going into, or is that...
We go into traceability in the fact that we will track an ingredient from a manufacturer as to what's in it. When I look at traceability from an agri-tech side, no. What I strongly believe in is collaboration in tech. The food landscape is huge, and it just wouldn't be feasible for us to build everything. And there are some amazing companies who are doing sustainability, provenance, all of that incredibly well. So what I would hope to do is pull them into our software so that at a touch of a button you can see the carbon footprint of what you're eating, the plastic points, the sustainability of the fish, all of that. But it's all in one system. But it's leveraging on other people who probably do it much better than we could ever.
So just to wrap up before we take a few questions, when you started your journey, if you'd known where you were going and sort of thing, so you look forward to 2019 and you think, okay, I've got 20 people. Is that where you thought you'd be, where you wanted to be? You're a bit ahead, a bit behind?
We're probably a bit behind. I thought we'd be done by now. But I mean, at the start, if you'd said to me that I would be here 5 years later, it's going to sound really lame, but I was reading the quote on the wall, and it's not so much about what we're doing and where we are, it's what we've all experienced as a journey and how incredibly I've grown. I think the company would have been better off had it started with me 5 years ago with who I am today, but I think there was a lot of learning that happened, a lot of mistakes were made, that I think if we did it all again, we would be here much quicker than we were. But I also think we're now pretty in vogue, so hopefully the next 5 years won't be as slow.
And finally, you mentioned some mistakes, and I think we've covered a couple of them. What would you say your biggest learning was, or has been so far?
Ooh.
It's a crap question, but I thought I'd ask it.
Yeah, it is a crap question. I mean, we've made so many mistakes, it's hard to pin down one big learning. Choose co-founders wisely. I'm very lucky with mine, so choose them wisely. And really think about what you're building. I wish I'd taken more time alone, locked in a room, really articulating my vision. I feel incredibly sorry for my team for having to keep up with me at times, and I really wish that I'd really documented the entire vision I had for Kafoodle, which weirdly has always been crystal clear. So I can see us from day 1 to 20 years. How long it would have taken us, I was hoping it was going to take 2 years, it's going to take 20. But I think what I was never really good at, and what was never fair on the team, was really documenting that and really articulating what my vision was for a company people were joining. Because I think, and it is that whole vision, all of that stuff that you always have on your wall that everyone says that we didn't have for a while. And it's just making sure that everyone knows where you're going, because then when we got the healthcare grant, people wouldn't have seen it as a shock. People would have known that actually our long-term goal was always to be there. But every now and again, my team still go, really? Are we doing that? And I'm like, yes, of course we're doing that, because of X, Y, and Z. And they're like, oh, right. And I just think, great, I haven't communicated that properly.
Yeah. Right, any questions?
Ask me in a month.
Okay.
But that would be the logical set. That would be the logical step for anyone with a data set, I would say. Barbados. No, I honestly don't know. I make a joke of I could never ever do this again. But I think it would be quite exciting to try it again, knowing what you know now. My first love is food. And this has felt amazing to do. My second love is property and watching the prop tech market. I'm not sure I have that in me. So hire-wise, we were really lucky at the beginning with the team that we basically took out of retirement. We actually haven't had a massive team turnover. But I think we very much now hire for character and culture, and then obviously with Caroline in it, we've got a little bit more boxy. But in theory, we used to just hire the right person. So we used to hire someone who really got what we were doing and came with the skill set that we could use. Whereas now we are much more skills focused. So obviously as we grow, you have to have done this before, you have to be really good at X, Y, and Z and really tick all the boxes, which is quite a change. Whereas in the beginning, because we really weren't paying anything or a lot, you kind of had to just love what we were doing. But that's often not the best way to do it, especially as you grow. So I think hiring in London, especially in tech, is incredibly competitive. I mean, salaries are high, and it is incredibly competitive to hire right. But I think if you take your time and you have the right proposition for someone, we're not a fintech company, so a lot of the techies are all working in fintech, so it's finding that happy medium of someone who loves what you do and then has the skill set to deliver it. The low moments don't stop. For the record, there is probably a minute of every day where I would give it all up if I didn't have a mortgage on my house. But I think, funnily enough, it's embracing that. So I was given the best advice ever is it's not your baby, and if your finger's not on the kill switch, you're not doing it right. So actually knowing that at any stage you can just stop and walk away and not being scared to do that is also what kind of makes you think, well, actually, if I don't kill it today, what can I do better tomorrow? And I think it's also, and I don't know how my team do it, if I'm honest. I admire them every day, but for me I know this can work, and I know this can genuinely change the world. And waking up every morning and knowing we're a very purpose-built brand. There is a huge purpose for what we're doing, is kind of what gets you through it. And honestly, no one else has offered me another job. That could also be it. So I see it as a personal problem because I don't read enough to be able to quote it. But the aging population is going to triple. So it's going to be a third of us, I believe, might be over the age of 65 in the next 20 or so years. Care homes are closing down, and we're moving towards just keeping people at home for longer. One of the many things that affects people when they're at home for longer is nutrition. So unfortunately, a lot of us also have dementia, because that is rising. So the problem I personally have is, my father is an example. The first thing they do is they unplug your oven and they take away your knives because you have dementia, so you're given a microwave. No, I don't think any of us would want to live out of a microwave for the next 10 years of our lives with ready meals. So if we don't disrupt the sector, how are we all going to be able to eat safely and healthily at home for ideally under £10 a day for the next 30 years of our lives? Because the average person might have dementia from the age of 65 and be at home. So that would be my argument. Whereas at the moment, I feel like Meals on Wheels is very expensive and ready meals aren't that healthy.
My wife would disagree about the microwave comment. Actually, Marcus, I need to cut that bit out.
Just cut all of it.
Any other questions? Anybody else? No, excellent. Right, thank you very much, Tarryn. If we could give her the usual thank you. Thank you.